My mother used to say there were only two kinds of family dinners. The first kind ended in polite silence. The second kind ended with somebody threatening to cut somebody else off. That night, sitting in the passenger seat of my own truck, while my mom called me for the third time in 10 minutes, I already knew which kind this was going to be. I stared at her name on the screen and let it ring one more time before answering. "Yeah," I said. Her voice came in sharp and tired. "Don't start with me, Cooper. Are you on your way or not?" I closed my eyes. Why do I have a feeling this is not actually a question? Because it isn't, she snapped. You said you would go. I said I'd think about going. You think too much. That's usually what people say right before they ask me to do something I don't want to do. There was a pause, then the sigh I knew too well. Your sister's tuition is due next week. I looked out through the windshield. And your stepfather and I have already covered most of it. Most? Cooper. I laughed once, but it wasn't funny. You are not serious. If you want the rest of that money, you go to dinner. So, this is blackmail now? It's family. That word, family. My mom could make it sound like a promise and a threat at the same time. I gripped the steering wheel hard enough to feel it under my palm. You know I hate blind dates. I know you hate everything that might lead to a commitment. That's not true. Then prove me wrong. I didn't answer because if I said anything else, I'd say something that would blow up in my face later. My mom went on as if she had already won. Her name is Lily Bradford. Her family is well connected. They're respectable. She's smart. She's kind. She's a person I don't know. She's a person who might actually want a future. I rolled my eyes. You make it sound like I'm a cracked foundation and she's the contractor. You're 31, Cooper, and maybe it's time to stop acting like every woman is a trap. I laughed again, shorter this time. Funny, that's exactly how this conversation feels. You'll go. No. Silence. Then my mom's voice dropped a notch. That meant she was done arguing and about to say something that would hit harder. Your sister wants to stay in school, she said. Your stepfather's business is still recovering. We are not asking for much. I leaned back against the seat and stared up at the roof of the truck. You're asking me to sit through a fake dinner and pretend I'm interested in someone because you need leverage. We're asking you to be decent. Decent would be not using my sister's tuition as a weapon. Decent would be not making your family beg you to show up to one dinner. I stared at the screen after she hung up. That was the thing with my family. Nobody ever raised their voice until they'd already made the knife wound look like my fault. I dropped my phone into the cup holder and sat there for a second, letting the anger settle. Then I started the truck. If they wanted me there, I'd go. And if they wanted a good little son who smiled, shook hands, and pretended his entire life wasn't being negotiated at a restaurant table, they were about to be disappointed. The place they picked was one of those upscale restaurants downtown that smelled like money and quiet pressure. The kind of place where everyone smiled too much and nobody ever said exactly what they meant. I walked in, checked my reflection in the glass by the host stand, and immediately hated the whole setup. Dark shirt, clean jeans, no tie, no fake confidence. Just me. The hostess looked up. Can I help you? I'm here for the Bradford reservation. Of course. She gave me that professional smile people use when they're about to seat you somewhere uncomfortable. Right this way. As she led me to the back room, I already felt it getting worse. Private section, long table, too many people. My mother, my stepfather, a man I vaguely recognized from some business event, and across from them, a woman in a pale dress who looked exactly like somebody my mother would approve of, Lily Bradford. She stood when I walked in and smiled like she'd been coached. Cooper. Hi. Lily, I said. Her handshake was soft, careful. It's nice to finally meet you. Sure. My mom immediately stood, too. There he is. My stepfather clapped me on the shoulder with that fake cheerful energy men use when they think pressure is affection. You made it. Apparently. Don't start, my mom warned under her breath. I pulled out the chair and sat before anybody could tell me where to sit. Lily folded her hands on the table. Your mom said you work in operations. Project coordination, I corrected. Right. She smiled again. That sounds very important. It sounds like a job. Her father laughed politely. My stepfather laughed with him. My mom looked relieved that nobody had yet started bleeding. I knew the script already. Ask about work. Ask about family. Ask about hobbies. Ask about whether I wanted kids. Ask about my 5-year plan as if my life were a spreadsheet somebody could keep open on a laptop. So, I cut to the part everybody was pretending not to get to. This is not a date, I said. The table went dead quiet. My mom closed her eyes for half a second. Lily's smile stayed on, but it tightened. Excuse me. This whole thing, I said, looking around the table, is not a date. It's a negotiation. My stepfather leaned forward. Cooper. No. Let him say it, Lily's mother cut in. Offended already. We're all adults here. Good, I said. Then let's act like adults. You don't want your daughter meeting me. You want to see whether I'm useful. My mom's face went white. That's enough. I ignored her. And you don't want me dating her. You want to see if this turns into something your families can profit from. Lily stared at me now, not smiling anymore. Her father said, "You're making assumptions." No, I said. I'm finally saying them out loud. My stepfather gave a low warning. You were told this was a respectful introduction. I was told to show up. That's enough, my mother snapped. I looked at her. Is it? She didn't answer. That was answer enough. Lily straightened in her chair. For what it's worth, I didn't want this, either. I looked at her. Then we have that in common. Her eyes narrowed a little. Not angry, just sharper now. If you're this difficult in front of people, I can only imagine what you're like in private. Probably worse. One of the men at the table gave a tight laugh, and then immediately looked like he regretted it. Lily's father cleared his throat. Mr. Hayes, if you have no interest in my daughter, you could have handled this more politely. I gave him a flat look. You're right. That surprised them. Then I added, I could have stayed home and saved everyone the performance. My mom slammed her glass down just hard enough to make the silverware jump. Cooper. I turned to her. No, seriously. You want me here because your plan works better if I smile through it. That is not fair. It's accurate. Her jaw clenched. She looked at the room, then back at me. You think the world owes you honesty, but you never offer any yourself. I almost laughed. Are you kidding me? You dragged me here with my sister's tuition hanging over my head. That was not yes, it was. Lily looked between us now, clearly realizing this was bigger than a bad date. Maybe I should go. No, my mom said too quickly. My stepfather said, let's not be dramatic. Dramatic? I repeated. You're literally using a dinner to strong-arm me into marriage politics. Lily's mouth parted slightly. Marriage politics? I pointed at the table. You think all of this is about dinner? Nobody answered. And then, because apparently the universe had a sense of humor, the entire backroom shifted. It started with the hush. Not a sudden silence, more like the sound of a room realizing someone important had just arrived. A server straightened near the door. Another one turned too fast. Conversation at the nearby tables dropped off like somebody had pulled a plug. Then I heard heels. Measured, clean, confident. The kind of sound that didn't ask permission. I looked up and the woman walking in at the head of the room made every other person in it feel like they'd been placed there by mistake. Tall, dark coat over a sharp black dress. Hair pinned back like she didn't waste time on anything that couldn't be controlled. Her face was calm in a way that looked almost cold until you got close enough to realize it wasn't cold at all. It was power. Vivian Mercer. Even if you didn't know her name, you knew her type. The kind of woman who didn't enter a room so much as take ownership of it. Mercer Industries, boardroom legend, media ghost, the IC CEO everybody talked about like she was a rumor they were afraid to confirm. No one at my table spoke. Nobody in the room seemed brave enough. Then Vivian's eyes landed on me. Just me. Not the Bradford family. Not my mother. Not the table full of confusion and social climbing. Me. And something about the way she looked at me made my stomach drop and kick at the same time. She crossed the room without breaking stride. One of the hosts moved toward her. Miss Mercer, we weren't expecting. She lifted one finger and he stopped talking. She reached my table, glanced once at my stunned family, then back at me. And before I could ask what the hell was happening, she said in a voice clear enough for the whole room to hear, he's not available. Nobody moved. Lily blinked. My mom looked like she'd forgotten how to breathe. My stepfather sat frozen with his mouth slightly open like he was waiting for someone else to explain reality to him. Vivian didn't glance at any of them again. She just kept her eyes on me and said, colder and sharper now, Cooper is with me. My brain stalled. With me? What the hell did that mean? Lily found her voice first. I'm sorry, but who are you? Vivian looked at her for the first time and I swear the room got even colder. I'm the reason this dinner ends now. Lily's mother sat up straighter. This is a private family matter. Vivian's expression barely changed. Not anymore. My mom finally recovered enough to speak. Miss Mercer, there seems to be some misunderstanding. There isn't. My stepfather stood halfway trying to recover dignity like he could bargain for it. If you know Cooper, then surely you understand. I understand enough, Vivian said. The whole table went silent again. Then she did something that made my pulse jump hard enough to annoy me. She reached for the back of my chair, leaned slightly toward me, and said in a quieter voice only I could hear, stand up. I stared at her. That was not a request. It was not even a command in the usual sense. It was a fact pretending to be polite. I should have refused. I should have called the whole thing insane. I should have asked her what in the hell she thought she was doing. Instead, I stood. Her hand settled briefly at my arm. Not soft. Not romantic. Just certain. Like she had already decided I was leaving with her and the rest of the world could catch up later. Then she turned back to the table and said, Cooper isn't here to be evaluated. My mother's face hardened. He came here of his own free will. Vivian tilted her head. Did he? The question landed like a blade. My mom didn't answer. Vivian kept going. Because from where I'm standing, he looks cornered. Nobody spoke. Vivian looked at Lily's father. You should be embarrassed. He flushed. Excuse me. You built a room full of witnesses and thought that made this elegant. My stepfather bristled. You have no idea what kind of arrangement this is. Vivian gave him a look so flat it made him stop talking halfway through his own sentence. I know exactly what kind of arrangement this is, she said. It's one where a man is being traded because the people around him think they own his future. My mom snapped. That is not true. Vivian glanced at her. Then why is he here? Nobody had a good answer. Vivian took one slow step closer to the table. He's leaving. Lily stood, too, finally annoyed. You can't just walk in here and claim him like this is some kind of game. Vivian turned to her with the calm of someone who had never once had to raise her voice to win. I'm not claiming him like a game, she said. I'm claiming him because it's already too late for anyone else. The room practically combusted. My mom stared at me like I had personally betrayed her by existing. My stepfather looked offended on principle. Lily looked stunned, then angry, then humiliated all at once. And me? I was somewhere between insulted, confused, and very aware that Vivian Mercer had just stepped into a trap I didn't understand and blown it apart with one sentence. She extended her hand to me. Not for show, not for the room, for me. Cooper, she said, come with me. I looked at her hand, then I looked at my mother, then at the people who had dragged me here to be measured, bought, and approved. And for the first time that night, I realized something was off in a way I couldn't yet name. Vivian Mercer was not here by accident. She had not walked into the wrong room. She had come here for me. I took her hand. The second my fingers closed around hers, I heard my mother say my name like it was a warning. I didn't stop. Vivian led me past the table, past the stunned host, past the people who had assumed my life was theirs to arrange. At the door, I finally looked at her and asked the only question that made sense. Why did you do that? She didn't slow down. She just looked at me with that same impossible calm and said, because if I hadn't arrived first, they would have kept you. And for the first time in my life, I had no idea whether I was being rescued or chosen. Vivian didn't let go of my hand until we were outside, not even in the lobby, not even when the valet looked like he wanted to ask a question and then decided he liked breathing too much to do it. Only when we reached her black sedan and her driver opened the rear door, did she finally turn to me. Get in. I looked at the car, then at her. You always talk like that. Only when I'm right. That's not an answer. It's the only one you need tonight. I should have argued. Instead, I got in. She followed and shut the door behind her with a soft, final click. The driver didn't even blink, like this was normal. Like billionaire CEOs were supposed to rescue guys from forced blind dates on a Tuesday night. The car pulled away. For a second, neither of us spoke. The city slid by in a blur of lights and glass, but the inside of the car felt strangely sealed off from everything else. Like we'd stepped into a different world and left the rest of it behind. I finally broke the silence. You know my mother is going to call the cops, right? Vivian leaned back. One light crossed over the other, calm as ever. No, she won't. You don't know my mother. I know people like your mother. That annoyed me more than it should have. People like my mother. People who think they can control a room if they raise their voice loud enough. I stared at her. You came into a private dinner and told everyone I was yours. She didn't look away. I said what was necessary. That's not an explanation. It's the truth. No, the truth is that I have no idea what just happened. For the first time, Vivian's mouth shifted slightly. Like she almost smiled, but didn't trust it. Then let me make it simpler, she said. You were being used. I laughed once. That's new. No, it's obvious. I leaned back and rubbed a hand over my face. You're not making me feel better. I'm not trying to. Great. She watched me for a second. You're angry. Really? I hadn't noticed. You should be. That pulled my eyes to her. What does that mean? It means they didn't just invite you to dinner. They brought you there to corner you. I frowned. You know that for a fact? Yes. How? She turned her head toward the window. Because your stepfather's company is under pressure. Because there's a contract they need approved. Because your name was mentioned in a conversation you were never supposed to hear. I narrowed my eyes. You've been watching my family. I've been watching your stepfather. That was even worse. I sat up a little straighter. Why? She looked at me again. And the answer in her expression was not simple. Because, she said, he's tied to something that could burn down half a boardroom if it gets exposed. My pulse kicked. There it was, the first real crack in the polished shell. So, this wasn't about me, I asked. Vivian held my gaze. It became about you. That line sat between us for a second. I didn't like how much it affected me. I crossed my arms. You're going to have to do better than that. I know. Then start talking. She did. Not all at once. Not in the neat, tidy way people tell stories when they're trying to control the damage. Vivian told it like she was handing me pieces of a broken glass and trusting me not to cut myself too badly. My legal team found irregularities in a procurement chain tied to your stepfather's company, she said. Small at first, then not small. Shell vendors, false invoices, off-book payments. I stared at her. You're telling me my family is dirty. I'm telling you somebody is laundering money through them. That hit hard enough that I actually laughed again, but there was nothing funny in it. And you thought the best way to tell me that was to crash my blind date. She gave me a look. I thought the best way was to keep you from being trapped there any longer. I shook my head. You're insane. Possibly. No, definitely. If it helps, I've been called worse. I looked at her. Why do I feel like that was supposed to make me like you? Did it? I opened my mouth, then shut it. She saw that, too. That was the problem with Vivian Mercer. She did not push in the way most powerful people did. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten. She just said things that landed clean and impossible. And somehow that felt more dangerous. The car took a sharp turn. I looked out the window and realized we weren't heading toward downtown anymore. Where are we going? My office. Tonight? Yes. No. She turned to me slowly. Cooper, I've had enough for one night, and I'm not asking. I stared at her. She stared back. The driver kept his eyes on the road like none of this had anything to do with him, and he wanted to stay that way. I pointed at her. You know what your issue is? No. You act like being rich means you can just say things and reality moves out of your way. For the first time, she looked almost amused. And you act like your opinion is going to stop the car. I had to look away because that was annoyingly fair. She reached into the seat beside her and pulled out a thin folder. My eyes narrowed. What's that? The reason I came. I didn't take it right away. She held it there until I did. Inside were copies of invoices, a list of vendor names, and one page that made my stomach go cold. My stepfather's signature. Not on one line, on multiple. I flipped through the pages faster now. Anger burning hotter with every sheet. This is real. Yes. You're sure? Cooper. I looked up at her. She didn't blink. I don't bring fake paperwork into my car. I let out a slow breath through my nose. My mother has no idea about this. I doubt that. What does that mean? It means she may not know every detail, but she knows enough to keep her eyes closed. That hurt more than I expected. I set the folder down on my lap. And what exactly do you want from me? The truth. I gave her a flat look. That's not a small request. No, it isn't. Then why do you think I can give it to you? Her voice stayed even. Because your name appears in one of the transaction logs. I went still. What? She watched me closely. Your name. Cooper Hayes. It was attached to a shipping approval that never should have passed your desk. My jaw tightened. That's impossible. I didn't say you did it on purpose. I never saw that file. I know. That made me stop. You know? Yes. How? She looked at the folder in my lap. Because the approval route was rerouted before it reached you. I stared at her, trying to put the pieces together and not liking what was beginning to form. So somebody used my name. Or wanted it to look that way. Why? Vivian was quiet for a beat. Then she said, because you're expendable to them. That one hit like a slap. I sat back. Expendable. That was a word people used when they thought you weren't worth the trouble of lying to. For a second I saw my whole life through that lens. My family, the pressure, the tuition, the dinner, the way my stepfather had looked at me tonight, like I was just another piece to move. I took a slow breath. Okay, I said, let's say I believe you. You should. Then tell me the part you're not saying. Her gaze sharpened. I knew I had her there because there was always a part they didn't say, always. Vivian rested one elbow against the door and folded her hand over it. The part I'm not saying is that the board already knows something is wrong. Your board? Yes. And they want someone to blame before the media finds out. I let that sink in. You're saying my family could be the fall guy? I'm saying that's one possibility. And the other? The other is that somebody in your family is working with them. I looked at her hard. You think it's my stepfather? I think your stepfather has enough motives to be interesting. That's a very polite way to accuse him of fraud. That's because I haven't finished. I sighed. Of course not. Her phone buzzed. She looked at it once and immediately stopped smiling. I noticed. What? I asked. Nothing. That's not nothing. You just changed faces. She tucked the phone away. We have a problem. Yeah, I got that part. The blind date. I frowned. What about it? She looked at me now with a cold kind of focus. They weren't just setting you up to be pressured. I said nothing. They were setting you up to be photographed. That made my stomach go tight. Why? Because somebody wanted a version of the story where you were seen with Lily Bradford. I stared at her. For leverage? Exactly. And you showing up ruined it. Her expression hardened. I did more than ruin it. I watched her face. You knew. You knew what they were doing. Yes. And you still came in like that. Yes. I couldn't stop myself. Why? That was the first time she looked away. Not far, just enough to tell me it mattered. When she spoke, her voice was quieter. Because I had a reason. I waited. She looked back at me. Do you know who Lily Bradford's older brother is? No. Derek Bradford. The name didn't mean anything to me. She saw that and continued. He owns half of the private security contracts in this city. He's also on the edge of being indicted for money movement through shell firms. I blinked. So, the whole blind date was tied to that. Yes. My head turned slightly. Why would my family be involved in that mess? Because your stepfather's company is the bridge. I stared at her. Now it was making less and less sense and somehow more at the same time. You're telling me there's a legal problem, a financial problem, and some kind of family problem, and I'm in the middle of all of it because my mom wanted me to marry into the right family. Yes. I laughed, but this time it was pure disbelief. That is absolutely insane. Vivian's eyes held mine. Welcome to my world. The words should have sounded dramatic. Instead, they sounded tired. And that changed something. I looked at her more carefully, at the way her jaw stayed tight, at the way she didn't fidget, at the way she spoke like every word had already been measured against consequences. For the first time, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to think. Vivian Mercer wasn't just strong. She was carrying a lot more than she let anyone see. The car slowed. I looked up. Her tower was ahead. No surprise there, only inconvenience. Her office building took up half a block and looked like the kind of place where people signed deals that changed other people's lives. I'd been there before, but only as staff, never like this, never with her. We went through a private entrance. The guard at the desk nodded at Vivian, then looked at me once and pretended not to have seen me at all. Her office was on the top floor, huge, quiet, too expensive to be comfortable. She tossed her keys onto a side table and walked straight to the bar cart, poured 2 glasses of water, and handed one to me. I stared at it. You always bring people here after kidnapping them. She glanced at me. Only the difficult ones. Then I should feel honored. You should. I almost smiled. Almost. Then she set her own glass down untouched and turned serious again. Sit. I didn't. She noticed and didn't press. Instead, she walked to her desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out another file. This one was thicker. She set it down between us like a judge placing evidence on the bench. What is that? I asked. The reason I didn't let you stay at that restaurant. I moved closer and looked down. Inside were printed emails, transaction notes, and security stills. My face was in one of them. Not now. Older, blurry, but definitely me. I looked up sharply. Where did you get this? Company records. You've been keeping files on me. No. She paused. Not on you. Around you. That sounded even worse. I flipped through the pages. Why am I in these? Because someone used your identity to route documents through a company account tied to your department. I looked up again. Why would they use me? Because you're good at your job and nobody suspects the quiet guy in the back. I hated how true that was. And because, she added, you don't have the kind of connections that make people question your paperwork. I slowly set the folder down. My voice came out rougher than I wanted. So, I'm a ghost. Vivian didn't answer immediately. Then she said, not to me. That one line landed harder than all the others. I looked at her. Why are you telling me this? She crossed her arms lightly. Because if you're innocent, I need you alive. And if I'm not? Her gaze held mine. Then I need to know what you remember. I took a breath. You really think I'm part of this? I think someone wants me to think you are. That's not comforting. It isn't supposed to be. I rubbed my thumb along the edge of the file and looked down at my own face in a blurry security photo. A stranger and not a stranger. This whole night felt like somebody had grabbed my life and started sliding the pieces across a table I didn't even know existed. I looked back up. What happens if I say no? To what? Helping you. A beat of silence. Then Vivian said, then they'll keep using you. I narrowed my eyes. That's supposed to convince me. No. She stepped closer. That's supposed to warn you. I should have pushed back. I should have told her she had no right to drag me into some corporate war because my name happened to appear on a page. Instead I said, and what if I do help? Her expression changed just slightly. Not softer, more real. Then she said, you get the truth. I almost laughed. That's it? No. What else? She looked at me for a long second. And when she spoke again her voice had dropped into something more personal. Then you get a chance to stop being managed by people who think they own you. That shut me up because now she wasn't talking about the file. She was talking about my family, my job, my whole life. And she was right. That was the worst part. Before I could answer, her office door opened without a knock. A woman in a gray suit stepped in, phone in hand, face tense. Vivian's assistant, I guessed. Miss Mercer, she said carefully, Derek Bradford is downstairs. Vivian didn't react. The assistant continued, he says this is urgent. I looked at Vivian. That your problem? Her eyes didn't leave the assistant. No. The assistant hesitated. He also said if you're with Mr. Hayes, he's not leaving without a conversation. I felt my stomach tighten. Vivian's head tilted very slightly. Then tell him to come up, she said. The assistant blinked. Ma'am. Vivian turned toward me. And for the first time since I'd met her, I saw something in her face that looked almost like satisfaction. Not joy, not warmth, strategy. She looked at me and said, "Now we see who is really sitting in your blind date." I frowned. What does that mean? She picked up the file, tapped it once against her palm, and said, "It means your night isn't over, Cooper." Then she looked at her assistant and added, "Send him up." I stared at her. You planned this. She gave me the smallest possible smile. Of course, I did. And the elevator dinged downstairs. The elevator dinged downstairs and the sound hit my nerves like a match thrown into gasoline. Vivian didn't move. She just stood there at the edge of her desk, folder in one hand, that same unreadable look on her face like she already knew exactly how this was going to play out. I stared at her. You are way too calm. That's because I'm prepared. For what? For him. The elevator dinged again. I frowned. You say that like I'm supposed to know who that is. You'll know soon enough. I crossed my arms. You keep saying that like it's supposed to make me feel better. It isn't. That was the thing about Vivian Mercer. She never pretended to be comforting when she wasn't. No fake warmth, no soft lies. If she wanted to scare you, she just told the truth in a clean voice and let it sit there. The assistant hesitated in the doorway. He's asking for privacy. Vivian gave a flat laugh. Then he should have called first. I looked at the assistant. Who is he? The assistant glanced at Vivian before answering. Mr. Derek Bradford. That made me blink. Bradford. That was my mother's side of the mess. Same surname as the family from dinner. I looked back at Vivian. That's not a coincidence. No, she said, it's not. The door opened again before I could ask anything else. And in walked a man in a charcoal suit with the kind of smile that looked expensive and fake at the same time. He was maybe late 30s. Good hair, sharp shoes, calm eyes that didn't match the smugness on his mouth. He took one look at me and smiled like he'd just found the weak point in a lock. Well, he said, there he is. I didn't like him on sight. Vivian's tone didn't change. Derek. Vivian. He glanced at my file on the desk, then at me again. I was beginning to think you'd keep him hidden. I don't hide what's mine. The room went still. I looked at her fast. She didn't look at me back. She kept her eyes on Derek like she'd just slid a knife between his ribs and wanted to see how he'd stand. Derek's smile tightened. That's an interesting word choice. Is it? He stepped farther into the office, hands in his pockets like he owned the air in the room. I came to discuss a misunderstanding. There isn't one. There absolutely is. His eyes flicked toward me. This one. I opened my mouth, but Vivian cut in first. Careful, she said. You're standing in my office trying to talk about my business with a man you don't know. Derek raised his eyebrows. Oh, I know him. That caught me off guard. You do? He looked at me like I was a puzzle piece he'd been waiting to flip over. Cooper Hayes. Moved up fast enough that people noticed. Quiet enough that they didn't ask why. My jaw tightened. And you are? He gave a little bow of his head. Derek Bradford. Senior counsel for Kessler Meridian. Negotiator, advisor, problem solver. That sounds made up, I said. Vivian's mouth twisted once, almost a smile. Derek ignored me. Vivian, you're making a mistake. No, she said. I'm making a choice. He looked at the file in her hand. By involving him? Yes. He's not part of this. Vivian's eyes narrowed a fraction. You'd know that better than I would. That was the second time she'd said something like that, and it landed harder this time. Derek turned his attention to me like he was switching from one subject to another. Did she tell you who she really is yet? I looked at him. You mean besides the part where she runs a company and scares grown men into needing therapy? Vivian actually let out a short, dry laugh. Derek didn't. You should be careful, he said. She has a habit of pulling people into rooms and then pretending they were always meant to be there. My stomach tightened. What's that supposed to mean? Vivian crossed her arms. It means he's here to waste our time. Derek smiled. Not mine. He reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a thin envelope. No seal, no logo, just white paper folded once. He held it up between two fingers. The board is aware of the missing documents. Vivian didn't blink. Then the board can send a notice. They did. She held out her hand. Give it to me. He didn't move. Then he looked at me again. You really don't know, do you? I stared at him. Know what? He smiled. And there it was again. That smug little edge of a man who thinks he's about to ruin your entire night. About the marriage agreement, he said. The room went quiet so fast I swear I heard my own pulse. I looked at Vivian. She didn't look surprised. That was worse. I took a step toward her desk. Marriage agreement. Derek watched my face carefully, like he was enjoying the exact moment the floor dropped out from under me. Vivian was supposed to marry me 6 months ago, he said. Board approved. Contract backed. Clean for shareholders. Good for the merger. Good for the market. I stared at him like he'd slapped me. He kept going. But she decided she wanted to be difficult. Vivian's voice cut through the room. I decided I didn't want to be owned. Derek gave a shrug. Same thing from certain angles. I looked between them. You're telling me she was engaged to you? Not engaged, he said. Functionally aligned. There's a difference. I let out a sharp laugh. You just said the most disgusting sentence I've heard all year. Vivian's eyes flicked to me. Derek finally handed her the envelope, but he didn't let go right away. Open it, he said. I don't take orders from you. You might want to read what's inside before you decide how brave you feel. Vivian took the envelope and tore it open with one clean motion. I watched her eyes move across the page. For the first time since I met her, something changed in her face. Not fear. Not shock. Annoyance, maybe. But underneath that, something colder. She handed me the page without a word. I took it. It was a legal notice. I scanned the top line, then the next, and then I stopped because my name was there. Not just once. 3 times. Cooper Hayes. Cooper Hayes. Cooper Hayes. I looked up. Why am I in a contract between the two of you? Derek's smile returned. That's the better question. Vivian's gaze locked on mine. Cooper, no. I held up the page. No, you don't get to say my name like that and stop there. Why am I in this? Derek answered before she could. Because you were never just a random employee. I stared at him. What the hell is that supposed to mean? It means, he said, your stepfather was never the only man in your family with a connection to this company. I frowned. What does my family have to do with this? Vivian finally stepped in. Enough. Derek turned to her. No, actually, not enough. He deserves to know what's underneath all this. I looked at Vivian again. What's underneath all this? She didn't answer, and that silence told me more than I wanted to know. Derek took one slow step closer. Voice dropping, your father used to work with Mercer Global. My throat went tight. My father was dead before I was 10. I said work with, Derek replied, not for. That hit me in a place I didn't know was still open. Vivian's expression went still. Derek. What, he said, you dragged him into the middle of this. He might as well hear it from someone who doesn't lie as prettily as you do. I looked at her. Did you know? Her jaw tightened. Not all of it. That's not a no. It's the truth. No, I said, my voice rising now. The truth is you showed up at my blind date, told a table full of people I was yours, then dragged me here and handed me folders like I'm some side quest in your business war. And now this guy walks in saying my dead father somehow mattered to your company. Derek folded his hands. It gets better. I turned to him. Do not say that like this is a movie. He gave a small, cold smile. Your father wasn't just tied to Mercer Global. He helped build the secure transfer system that made this whole network possible. I blinked. No, he didn't. Vivian's eyes stayed on me. Cooper. I said no. Derek's voice was calm. He did. And after he died, someone buried the records. I laughed once, but it cracked right down the middle. That's absurd. Is it? Derek asked. Because your name appeared in our old access logs 6 years ago. I froze. 6 years ago. A memory flickered. Not clear. Just pieces. A hallway. A badge. Someone saying my name in a hurry. Hashtag a phone call. I never returned. A fire drill. No. Something else. I shook my head. That's not possible. Vivian watched my face carefully now. You remember something. I remember nothing. You remember enough to be confused. Derek tapped the page in my hand. That's the problem with buried things. They don't stay buried. I looked down at the legal notice again. It wasn't just a marriage agreement. There were clauses. Transfer rights. Proxy terms. Confidentiality locks. Board succession language. And one line that made my stomach drop so hard I felt it in my knees. Asterisk: if the Mercer line remains unfulfilled, control may be reassigned through the Hayes contingency branch. Asterisk. I looked up slowly. What is a Hayes contingency branch? Vivian didn't answer. Derek did. He smiled without warmth. That's you, Cooper. The room felt too small all of a sudden. I took a step back. No. Yes, Derek said. Your father left a signature chain in the original asset structure. If Vivian marries into the wrong side, control of certain holdings goes elsewhere. If she stays unmarried, it can trigger a review. And if she chooses someone outside the approved chain. He shrugged. Well, that's why we're here, isn't it? I looked at Vivian. And now I could hear the pieces clicking into place in the ugliest way possible. The blind date. The dinner. Her showing up. Her calling me hers. Derek walking in with legal papers. My name in a contract I'd never seen. I stared at her. You didn't just rescue me. She held my gaze. No. You were using me. Derek made a soft sound, almost satisfied. Vivian didn't deny it. That hurt more than I expected. I folded the paper slowly and shoved it back into the envelope with a hand I didn't entirely trust. Say something, I told her. She did. It started that way. My chest tightened. Derek leaned back against the wall like he was watching a board vote. There it is. Vivian ignored him. I needed to know whether you were real. I laughed, but now there was no humor left in it. Real? Whether your connection to the old files was accidental, whether your family was clean, whether you had a role in what's been hiding under all this. And now I know you're involved. That's not what I asked. Her eyes held mine. Now I know I'm not done with you. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. That would have sounded like a threat from anyone else. From her, it sounded dangerously close to a confession. Derek watched us for a moment, then pushed off the wall and checked his watch. This is getting sentimental, he said. I hate that for us. I turned to him. What exactly do you want? He looked amused by the question. Today, I want Vivian to sign the board compliance statement. I want her to drop the unauthorized files, and I want her to stop pretending she can rewrite an agreement that's already been approved. Vivian's voice went flat. I'm not signing anything. You will. No. Derek smiled again. Then the board moves without you. I glanced at Vivian. What does that mean? It means, Derek said, she loses voting authority, frozen accounts, public review, a very ugly press cycle. I frowned. You can do that? He looked almost insulted. I can do a lot worse. Vivian didn't flinch. Then do it. Derek's smile faded. You think I'm bluffing? I think you enjoy hearing yourself speak. That almost made me snort. Derek looked at me now, and the fake politeness disappeared. You're standing next to the wrong woman. I looked right back at him. Funny. She's the only one in this room who hasn't lied to my face. Vivian's head turned slightly toward me. Derek noticed it, too. He took one more step forward. You don't understand what you're being pulled into. I understand enough. No, you don't. Try me. He looked at Vivian. Tell him about the archive. She went still, and then I knew I'd hit the edge of the map again. The archive? I repeated. Derek smiled like a man who just found the pressure point. Vivian's voice turned dangerously quiet. Get out. He didn't move. You heard me, she said. Get out. He ignored her and looked at me instead. There's a sealed archive tied to your father. If she opens it, everything changes. I looked at Vivian. What archive? She didn't answer. Derek spread his hands. Ask her why she's been so desperate to find you. I took a breath, slow and sharp. Desperate? Vivian's expression didn't break, but I saw the shift, tiny, real. That was enough. I turned to Derek. Get out. He laughed softly. Or what? I stepped forward before I really thought about it. Or I'll put your teeth through that expensive smile. Derek looked at me for a long second. Then he actually smiled. Not smug now, interested. There he is, he said quietly. That part of you. I frowned. What part? He glanced at Vivian. The one she remembers. The room went dead silent. I stared at him. Vivian went cold all the way through, and Derek, satisfied that he'd opened the right wound, finally turned and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he stopped and looked back. You can keep him for now, he said to Vivian. But if the archive opens, he'll learn exactly what kind of man his father was. Then he looked at me. And exactly why she found you first. He laughed. The office door shut behind him with a soft click that sounded way too final. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. I held the legal notice in my hand like it might bite. Finally, I turned to Vivian. Tell me the truth. She said nothing. I took a step closer. Now. Her eyes met mine. And for the first time all night, the ice in them cracked just enough for me to see what was underneath. Fear, not for herself, for me. And that scared me more than anything Derek had said. She inhaled once and then said, Your father didn't die the way you were told. My stomach dropped. I stared at her. What? She didn't look away. And if Derek is right, then somebody has spent years making sure you never found out. I couldn't speak. Vivian reached for the folder on her desk, but her hand stopped halfway there. Then she looked at me again and said the one thing that turned my whole world upside down. Cooper, I didn't come to that restaurant because of the board. She paused. I came because your name was on a list I've been trying to protect for 6 years. I felt the room sway a little. What list? She looked at me like she was about to hand me a loaded gun. Then she said, the list of people who were supposed to disappear. And somewhere far below us, another elevator started moving. The elevator started moving again, and somehow that was the most terrifying sound I'd heard all night. I stared at Vivian. The list of people who were supposed to disappear. She didn't answer right away. That was answer enough. My mouth went dry. You can't just say something like that and then stand there like we're discussing the weather. Vivian's jaw tightened. I didn't plan to tell you tonight. That makes me feel worse, not better. I know. I took a step back and dragged a hand through my hair. No, seriously, what list? What people? And why the hell am I on it? You weren't on it, she said, not at first. That is not helping. She looked at me, tired now in a way I hadn't seen before. Not weak, just stripped of some of the steel she wore like armor. Cooper, she said, your father was part of an internal security project connected to Mercer Global and 3 outside firms. He found something he shouldn't have. Then he vanished. My chest tightened. You already said he didn't die the way I was told. Yes. So he's alive. Her silence lasted half a second too long. I felt it in my gut before she even spoke. Maybe, she said. I gave a hollow laugh. Maybe I'm telling you the truth. No, I snapped, anger finally breaking loose. You're telling me enough truth to keep me moving, but not enough to let me stand still. Her eyes hardened. Because standing still gets people killed. That shut me up for exactly 2 seconds. Then I pointed at the folder on her desk. And what is that? Another piece of the truth. Yes. Then open it. I did. No. I mean all of it. Right now? She looked at me for a long beat, then reached into the bottom drawer of her desk and pulled out a small black key card. I frowned. What's that? The archive access. Of course it was. I stared at her. You had that the whole time. I've had it for months. And you didn't use it. I tried. That's not an answer. It's the one I have. I laughed again, but there was no humor left in it. You are unbelievable. Vivian's expression didn't change. And yet you're still here. I hated that she was right. She motioned toward the side door. Come on. I didn't move. Where? The archive. I blinked. You mean now? No, she said drily. Next year. I should have been angry at the sarcasm. Instead, I almost smiled. Almost. She noticed. Of course. If you're done pretending you don't want answers, follow me. That was the thing with Vivian Mercer. She never asked twice. She just made the first choice sound like the only one left. I followed her. We moved through a private corridor behind her office, past a security panel, then down a narrow stairwell that smelled faintly of metal and old paper. Her heels barely made a sound. Mine echoed like I was announcing every bad decision I'd ever made. At the bottom was a reinforced door with a biometric lock. Vivian swiped the keycard. The panel turned green. Then she pressed her thumb to the scanner. The lock clicked. I stared at it. You really do have a secret lair. Don't sound so impressed. I'm not impressed. Liar. The door opened inward with a soft hydraulic hiss. Inside was a room with no windows, no decoration, and no warmth. Rows of cabinets lined the walls. A long metal table sat in the middle. One monitor glowed faintly on the far side. This wasn't an archive. It was a vault. I stepped inside slowly. This is insane. Vivian shut the door behind us. Yes. I turned to her. You say that like it's normal. In my world, it is. That's not comforting either. She walked to the central table and placed the folder down. Look. I came closer. The screen was already on. Several scanned documents were open. Each one stamped with old internal codes, redacted names, and dates going back years. My eyes fixed on one line. Operation Glass Tide. What is that? I asked. Vivian's voice was low. An internal cleanup project. I looked at her. Cleanup of what? People. I went still. She kept going anyway, like stopping would make it worse. Witnesses, employees, contractors, anyone who learned too much, asked the wrong question, or became a risk. I stared at the screen. That's impossible. It's documented. Documented doesn't make it real. No, she said, but it makes it provable. My stomach felt like it had dropped through the floor. I pointed at the screen. And my father was part of this. He found evidence of it. And then someone moved against him. I turned away, breathing hard. No. No. You're not dropping that on me like this is some quarterly report. I'm not trying to be gentle. I noticed. She let the silence sit there for a moment before speaking again. Your father was one of the original auditors. He worked under a different name. When he discovered the pattern, he copied the archive and tried to bring it out. I looked back at her. Copied it for who? For me. That hit harder than I expected. You knew my father. I knew of him. That's not the same thing. No. Then stop dancing around it. She met my eyes. He trusted me. I didn't know what to do with that. The monitor shifted to another file. A photo appeared. I leaned closer. My breath caught. It was my father, younger than in the pictures I'd seen, lean, serious, staring straight into the camera like he already knew the world was lying to him. I reached for the edge of the table to steady myself. Vivian watched me carefully. That image was taken 3 months before he disappeared. I whispered, he looks like me. Yes, she said quietly. He does. I stared at the screen until the edges blurred. All those years, all those questions, the way my mother had gone stiff whenever his name came up, the way nobody ever gave me a clean answer. I turned on Vivian. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I didn't know if you could be trusted. That was so blunt it stunned me. Then I glared at her. And now I know you're angry enough to be honest. That's a terrible standard. It's the one I have. I pushed off the table. So what exactly is this list? The one you said I was on. She didn't answer immediately. She tapped a few keys on the monitor, then brought up another file. This one had names, a lot of names. Some were blacked out, some weren't. My eyes scanned the list and stopped on one I recognized, Derek Bradford. Another name below it, my stepfather. I stared. You've got to be kidding me. Vivian's voice was flat. I wish I were. I looked at her sharply. My stepfather is tied to this. Indirectly, through shell entities and old approvals. I shook my head. No, that man barely knows how to use a scanner without calling someone. Which makes him useful, she said. I looked back at the list. And my mother? Her silence came back. I turned slowly. Vivian. She shut her eyes for just a second. She knew enough. That answer landed like a blow. I felt anger spike, so hot it almost made me dizzy. You're telling me she sat across from me tonight, let me get dragged into a fake date, and knew I was being used in something like this? She may not know the full scope. I don't care about the full scope. My voice echoed off the concrete walls. She didn't flinch. She just stood there and took it, which somehow made me angrier. I cared about my family, I said, quieter now but shaking. I thought they were just manipulating me. I didn't know they were hiding a war. Vivian's expression changed then, faintly but enough. I know, she said. I laughed without humor. No, you don't. She stepped closer. You think I'm not standing in the same fire? I looked at her. The calm mask was still there, but now I could see the strain under it. The exhaustion. The fact that she had probably been carrying this alone for years. That didn't forgive anything, but it did explain why she kept cutting straight to the bone. She reached over and tapped another name on the screen. Mine. My throat tightened. It was added 6 years ago, she said. I went still. Added by who? I don't know. You don't know? Not for certain. That's reassuring. Cooper. No, I pointed at the screen. You keep saying my name got put on some list like that's just a line item. Why? Why me? Vivian's gaze held mine. Because your father left something behind and someone thought you might know where it was. I stared at her. I don't. I know. Then why am I still on it? Because the people running this didn't know that. I took a sharp breath. For a few seconds neither of us moved. Then the intercom in the corner crackled. Vivian moved instantly. One hand going to the wall panel. Her body went stiff in a way that told me this was bad before I even heard the voice. Miss Mercer, the speaker said. There are vehicles outside. Vivian pressed the button. Whose? 3 black SUVs. No plates. They're requesting access. My chest tightened. I looked at her. Tell me that's normal. It isn't. The speaker crackled again. One of them has a federal escort permit. Vivian's jaw set. Of course it does. I frowned. That's not good. Is it? No, she said. It means they're not here for a conversation. A cold wave rolled through me. I looked back at the screen. At my father's face. At my name on the list. And suddenly the room felt much smaller than it had a minute ago. What do we do? I asked. Vivian shut the monitor with one decisive tap. Then she turned to me and said, You do exactly what I tell you. I stared at her. That's not comforting. It's survival. The building lights flickered once overhead, then again, and somewhere above us, heavy footsteps started moving across the floor like somebody had already found the front door and decided manners were unnecessary. Vivian reached into a drawer, pulled out a small pistol, and checked it with calm, practiced hands. I looked at her, then at the gun, then back at her. You're kidding. I'm not. You keep a gun in your archive. I keep options. That should have been enough to scare me. Instead, it made something in me go strangely still. Because for the first time all night, I understood exactly what kind of woman Vivian Mercer was. Not just a CEO, not just a woman with a secret, a woman who had been waiting years for somebody to come through the door. She looked at me, and this time there was no polish left in her voice. Cooper, she said, if they get downstairs before we move, they'll take everything. I swallowed. And if we move now? She handed me the archive key card. Then, she said, we run. Above us, another door slammed, and for the first time in my life, I didn't know whether I was running from danger or running toward the truth. The first explosion of sound came from upstairs. Not a gunshot, not yet. A heavy crash, then shouting. Vivian moved before I could even process it. She grabbed the archive drive from the table, shoved it into my hand, and pointed at the back wall. There's a service exit. I stared at her. You said we run. We are. Then why do you sound like you're sending me alone? Because someone has to keep them busy. I hated how calm she sounded saying that. I looked at the pistol in her hand. You're seriously going to stand here and fight 3 SUVs? She gave me a look that could have frozen the room. Do you want to argue, or do you want to live? That was a fair question, and I hated that, too. Another slam echoed overhead. Dust fell from the ceiling. I grabbed her wrist before she could move past me. I'm not leaving you here. For a second, she actually looked surprised. Then her expression softened by a fraction. That's a very bad decision. Yeah, well, I've had a lot of bad decisions tonight. Her eyes held mine, and for one strange second, in the middle of all that noise and concrete and danger, everything else got quiet. Then the intercom crackled again. Miss Mercer, the voice said, they've breached the lobby. Vivian's face tightened. How many? Too many. She ended the call and looked at me. Now would be a good time to trust me. I let out a rough breath. You keep saying that like it's easy. It isn't. That's not the problem. Her gaze stayed on mine. Then what is? I should have said the archive, the men upstairs, my father, the list. Instead, I said, you. That landed between us hard. Her eyes shifted, just slightly, and something in her face changed again. Something more human than the armor she wore. I didn't have time to figure out what it meant. Another crash shook the building. Vivian stepped back first, breaking the moment like it was glass. Move. We ran. The service corridor was narrow and half-lit, lined with old metal piping and emergency panels. Vivian moved fast for someone in heels. I kept pace only because fear is a great instructor. We hit the back stairwell and started down. At the landing below, voices echoed. I grabbed Vivian's arm and pulled her into the shadows. Just as two men in dark jackets moved past the lower door. One of them carried a rifle. My stomach dropped. Vivian leaned close to my ear. Don't make a sound. I whispered back, that's your whole plan. She gave me the smallest look. No, that's the beginning of the plan. The two men moved on. We slipped down the stairs and out through a side exit into the alley behind the tower. Cold air hit my face like a slap. Across the street, 3 black SUVs sat with their engines running, lights off, waiting like they owned the night. One of the back doors opened. A man stepped out in a long coat, followed by another in a suit so clean it looked ceremonial. The second man looked directly at us. He raised a hand and smiled, not at Vivian, at me. My skin went cold. Vivian saw it, too. Run. We didn't argue this time. We ran. The alley opened into a narrow side street, then into a service road behind the neighboring building. My lungs burned. Vivian didn't slow down once. She cut around a row of dumpsters, shoved a locked door open with her shoulder, and dragged me through before the first shout reached us. Inside, the hallway was dark and empty. She locked the door behind us. Breathing hard now for the first time, I stared at her. You're terrifying. She bent one hand against the wall for a second. I know. Then she looked up and actually laughed, one short, breathless sound that made her seem younger, less untouchable. That laugh almost wrecked me more than the SUVs. Still want to argue? She asked. I shook my head. Not right now. Good. We moved through the building and out the front entrance into a quiet residential block several streets over. A black sedan was already waiting at the curb. I slowed. You planned that, too. Vivian looked at me. Of course I did. I opened the door, then paused. Are you ever not 3 steps ahead? She met my eyes. Only when you're involved. That should have made me smile. Instead, it made my chest hurt. We got in. The sedan pulled away. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The city slid past again in streaks of light. But now it felt different, sharper, more exposed, like the world had peeled back and revealed the machinery underneath. I finally looked down at the archive drive in my hand. What's on this? Vivian was quiet for a beat. Everything. I swallowed. That's not a reassuring word. No, she said, it isn't. I turned it over in my fingers. My father? Yes. The list? Yes. The people who disappeared? Yes. I looked at her. And me? Her eyes shifted toward the window, then back to me. You're the part they didn't expect. I frowned. That's not an answer. It's the most honest one I have. I leaned back and stared at the roof of the car. So, what happens now? Vivian looked at me for a long time before answering. Now, she said, the truth comes out. I let out a slow breath. And after that? After that, she said, they decide how much damage they can survive. That made me laugh once, under my breath. You really are made of steel. No, her voice softened. I'm just tired of losing. That got my attention. I turned to her. She was looking straight ahead. Jaw set, but her hand had loosened around the edge of the seat. For all her control, for all her calm, there was something raw under it now. I asked quietly, "Is that what this was about? All of it?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "No." I waited. She finally looked at me. "This was about you." My heart thumped hard once. "Me?" "Yes." "Why?" Vivian's voice dropped. "Because your father trusted me with his life, and I failed him." I stared at her. She kept going. Each word measured. I told myself I was protecting the evidence, that if I waited long enough, I'd find the right moment, the right leverage, the right way to expose everything without getting people killed. Her mouth tightened. But I didn't move fast enough. I looked at her and saw something I hadn't seen before. Regret. Real regret. Not the polished kind people use in interviews. I said, "So you found me now because you think I can fix it?" "No," she said. That surprised me. She turned fully toward me. "I found you because I couldn't let them take the last person connected to him." My throat tightened. "The last person?" "My father's archive is gone," she said. "Most of the witnesses are gone. The ones left are terrified. You were the only one who never knew enough to be scared. That's supposed to make me feel special." Her mouth moved faintly. "No, it's supposed to make you alive." For a second I didn't know what to say, then the car slowed. Not because of traffic, because we had arrived. I looked out the window and saw it. A quiet riverside pier with one light on at the far end. The kind of place nobody would pick unless they wanted privacy or a body. I looked back at Vivian. "You brought me to a pier." She nodded once. "You said you wanted the truth. That's not how people usually get the truth." "No," she said. "This is how they survive it." She opened the door before I could answer. The cold air off the water hit us hard. At the end of the pier stood one figure, then another, and then my breath caught. The first was Derek Bradford. The second was my mother. She looked smaller than I remembered. Tired, pale, standing there with both hands wrapped around her coat like the night had a grip on her. I stared at her. "Mom!" She flinched like the word hurt. Derek raised both hands in mock surrender. "Look at that, family reunion." Vivian stepped beside me, and I felt her presence like a shield. My mother's eyes filled instantly. "Cooper!" I cut her off. "Tell me you didn't know." She looked at me and couldn't speak. That was answer enough. My jaw tightened. "You knew." Tears rolled down her face. "Not all of it." I laughed once, bitter and sharp. "Everyone keeps saying that tonight." Derek clicked his tongue. "Emotional scenes are exhausting. Can we move on?" Vivian's voice went cold. "You were never supposed to be here." Derek smiled. "And yet, here I am." He held out a folder. My eyes narrowed. "What is that?" "The final transfer." He looked at Vivian. "If you want to save the archive, sign over the key companies in the board vote." Vivian didn't move. He glanced at me. "If she doesn't sign, your mother gets arrested for obstruction, your stepfather goes down for fraud, and you get dragged into every file with your name on it." I turned sharply to my mother. "Is that true?" She covered her mouth, shaking. I looked at Vivian. "Is he lying?" "No," she said. Derek smiled. "See, she does have some manners." Vivian ignored him and kept her eyes on me. "He's telling the truth about the charges, not about the reason." I frowned. "What reason?" She stepped closer to me and the words that came next were quiet enough that only I heard them. "Because your father wasn't the only one they tried to remove." My breath caught. She looked me straight in the eye. "Your name was added because you were his son." The pier went dead still. I stared at her. "What?" She kept going, voice steady even as her face changed. "They assumed you'd eventually become a problem, like him. So they watched you. Then they used your family to keep you close and keep you ignorant." My mind reeled. My father, my mother, my stepfather, the files, the blind date, the list, everything. I turned slowly to Derek. "You knew." He shrugged. "I suspected." I took a step forward and Vivian's hand brushed my arm. Subtle but grounding. Derek noticed. Of course he did. His smile sharpened. "There it is, the part she likes." My voice came out rough. "Shut up." "Or what?" I looked at him and saw, for the first time, not a polished lawyer or a boardroom shark, Just a man who thought he could bury enough people to stay standing. I handed the archive drive to Vivian. Her eyes flicked to mine. Cooper. I'm done being managed, I said. Then I took one more step toward Derek. He laughed softly. That doesn't change anything. No, I said. It changes everything. And I looked at my mother. She was crying now, openly. I asked the question I'd been carrying for years. Did you ever tell him I existed? Her face crumpled. Yes, she whispered, once. My throat tightened. She looked at me with all the pain she'd been hiding for so long. He came to see you, she said. Your father, one time. He wanted to take you away before they found you. The world tilted. I couldn't speak. She swallowed hard. I was scared. I thought if I stayed quiet, they'd leave us alone. I closed my eyes for 1 second, then opened them again. Did they? She shook her head. No, they never do. Derek glanced toward the street. This is sweet, but we're running out of time. Vivian took the folder from him. You're already out of time. He frowned. Excuse me. She lifted the drive slightly. The archive was copied 2 hours ago. Derek froze. I stared at her. You did what? Vivian's expression didn't change. I told you I keep options. His face darkened. You can't have copied that without access clearance. She tilted her head. You mean the clearance your board gave my legal team? After you walked into my office and threatened me. Derek's smile vanished. For the first time all night, he looked genuinely cornered. Vivian turned to me. Your name was on the list because they wanted control. She held my gaze. I brought you to that restaurant because I didn't want them to control you first. I swallowed. That's your version of romance. Her mouth softened at last. Just a little. No, this is. Then she took my hand. Not for show. Not to claim something. Just to hold on. And in that moment, with the pier, the water, my mother crying behind me, and Derek Bradford realizing he had lost, I finally understood everything she had been trying not to say. She hadn't just found me. She had chosen me. Derek took one step back. This isn't over. Vivian looked at him with complete, deadly calm. It is for you. 2 black cars turned onto the road behind us. Not his. Police. The first set of blue lights flashed across the water. Derek turned, stunned. What did you do? Vivian's answer was almost gentle. I made the call before we left the tower. His face drained of color. The officers moved in fast. Derek tried to step away, but he was already finished. My mother covered her face. The night seemed to fold in on itself, and then it was over, just like that. Derek was in cuffs. My stepfather's name was already spreading across the official channels. My mother was being escorted away for questioning. The archive was secure. The list was exposed. And Vivian stood beside me in the cold, still holding my hand. I looked at the water and then back at her. So, I said, voice rough, what happens now? She turned to me. For once, there was no corporate mask, no cold queen, no strategy in her eyes. Just her. Nowhere to hide. Now, she said, I stop pretending I can do this without you. I let out a quiet breath. Then I asked the only question that mattered. And what if I want in? A tiny smile touched her mouth. The real kind. The kind that made everything before it feel like waiting. Then, she said, you come home with me. The wind moved across the pier. I looked at her hand in mine, at the city behind us, at the life I'd been forced out of and the one still waiting ahead. Then I squeezed her fingers back. Yeah, I said, I think I will. And for the first time that night, Vivian Mercer smiled like she had something to lose and something to keep.